Welcome to our video tutorial for question number 7 of our daily review. Question number 7 is working with dividing fractions. And although we've worked on division on other problems in our daily review, we have not specifically talked about dividing fractions. When we divide fractions, we want to make sure that we use the least common multiple to convert to fractions that have common denominators. Now, this skill of least common denominator is what we are practicing every week in question 5 of our daily review. So you can go back there and take a look at that process if you need a little bit of help. Let's go ahead and take a look at a problem that will look similar to what we will see on question 7 every week. Here it tells us that you have 3/4 yard of pipe, and we want to know how many pieces you can cut the pipe into if each piece is 1/8 of a yard. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the numbers that are in that problem. I have 3/4 and I'm going to write down 1/8. And I notice right away that the denominators are not the same. And I need to get those to have denominators that are the same. And I'm going to do that by simply using my least common multiple strategy. So I'm going to list my multiples of 4. And I'm going to also list my multiples of 8. Once I've made my list of multiples for the two denominators, I'm simply looking for the number that is in both lists, but that is also the smallest number. And hopefully I can identify that that is 8. Once I've identified that it's 8, I'm going to notice that my red fraction, 1/8, already has that denominator. So that means I don't need to do anything with that denominator or that fraction. However, my green fraction needs to be converted into a fraction that has 8 on the bottom. I'm going to do that by thinking about what number I could multiply the denominator of my fraction by to give me 8. In this case, I know that 4 times 2 is equal to 8, so I can also multiply the top of my fraction by 2, and now my new fraction is going to be 6/8. So 6/8 divided by 1/8 is our new math problem that we're going to work with. Now, we're going to look at 2 ways that we can do this type of problem today. The first way is going to be using a fraction diagram. So I'm going to draw a fraction diagram down below that represents this situation. Here, I have a fraction bar that's been split up into 8 parts, and I'm simply going to shade in 6 of those 8 parts to represent my first fraction. My next step is to see how many groups of 1/8 can fit inside of those shaded parts. Well, I'm going to do that by simply circling any groups of 1/8 that I see. And pretty quickly, I'm going to notice that my answer to this problem is 6. There will be 6 total pieces of pipe that are 1/8 of a yard apiece. That's how we would do this with a fraction diagram, but we could have also just done this mathematically as well. If the denominators of our two fractions are the same, we can simply divide the two numerators together. 6 divided by 1 would get me 6, and we're going to end up with the same answer either way. Now that particular problem was pretty easy because we were working with 6 and 1, and 1 is a really nice number to divide by. But that doesn't always work out that way. So we're going to take a look at another example as well. In this case, we're going to see something that's a little bit more complicated. Here, we're going to have 7/8, and this time we're going to divide this by 3/8. As I take a look at this, I'm going to use my same strategy and notice that my denominators are already the same. But again, if they weren't, you would want to use the least common multiple to find common denominators. So let's go ahead and build a fraction diagram that has 8 parts. And we're going to just go ahead and shade in 7 of those 8 parts to represent our first fraction. The next part is we want to circle groups of 3/8. So I'm going to go ahead and circle any groups of 3/8 that I see. Now this is really similar to what we did in the last problem, except for instead of circling groups of 1, which made the problem really easy, we're going to be circling groups of 3, which make this problem a little bit more difficult. I can pretty easily see that I have 2 whole pieces in this problem, but I also have something that's left over. And we need to determine how we can describe what is left over in this problem. In order to do that, I need to go back and I need to think about what is making up each of my 1 whole piece that's there. So I'm going to notice that inside of my 1 whole piece, there are 3 smaller pieces. And in my second piece, there are another 3 smaller pieces. That means that I have 1 of those 3 smaller pieces left over. So that means that my answer to this problem is going to be 2 wholes and 1/3 of a part that's left over. So I end up with 1/3 left over, and that 1/3 comes from I have 1 green piece out of 3 green pieces were what was making up each of those circles that I made. Again, I could do this mathematically as well. Because my denominators are the same, I can simply take 7 and divide it by 3, or divide the 2 numerators together, 7 divided by 3, and that is going to give me 2 and 1/3 as well. And so that gives us good information. The real key to dividing fractions for right now is making sure that we have common denominators, and we can always find those common denominators by using our least common multiple.